Are you interested in curriculum for your preschool or pre-K child this year? Well, I have got you covered. I'm going to share all about the curriculum and resources that we used with our daughter this past year. Now, big question. Do you actually need to use curriculum with your preschooler? Not necessarily, but I do believe there is a place for curriculum if your child is really interested in developing certain skills and doing some focused hands-on work throughout their day. Now, before I get into all the goodies, I do want to preface that it's so important for you to pay attention to what your child's learning needs are and to really gauge and see if they're actually ready to engage with a curriculum. Because the last thing you want to do is turn your little one off to learning from books and doing activities. Now, many preschool curricula that I have come across does assume that your child has already started to practice certain skills in key areas. The first being fine motor skills. So being able to pick up a pencil or a crayon and draw some lines or maybe some circles. The second area is visual discrimination. So matching items, like items, sorting things based on size or color, and also starting to distinguish between different symbols. So making distinctions between letters and numbers. The last key area is language, communication, and listening skills. So being able to have the attention to listen through a story and also start to retell and recall parts and pieces of that story. They can also follow a certain set of directions and be able to understand and follow instructional guidance. Now, if your child is still in the process of developing all of the skills that I just mentioned, I would recommend that you start them off with something like a toddler learning folder, and I will link one down below that's by JDA, who incidentally authored all of the curriculum that I'm going to be sharing with you today. It is a fantastic resource, and it's definitely one that I plan to use with my son, who is turning 2 this year. If you are feeling like your child is already comfortable with some of these skills and shows you developmental readiness, I would recommend that before you dive into curriculum, you purchase things like free printables and you have some Play-Doh mats for them that they can engage with, and then you see how much time that they start to spend with that and whether their interest wanes or it grows. And in the latter case, that's when you can start to think about some fantastic curriculum to implement with your preschooler. And let me share with you some of what we used this year that I absolutely loved. So the first curriculum set is a pre-K literacy and math pack by JDA that I printed offline. It's an e-resource, so it's downloadable from her Teachers Pay Teachers store, and I put each of them into binders and into sheet protectors. This was a very important step because this allowed us to use a lot of different manipulatives like magnets, magnet numbers, magnet letters, and also bottle caps that had numbers and letters written on them. This was a fantastic entry point for my daughter, and JDA actually has a video on this curriculum. If you're interested, I'll also link that down below. And she encourages you to use the curriculum in that way. In the Math Pre-K Learning Pack, you're going to find a lot of matching activities with numbers, so being able to, again, exercise that visual discrimination skill and being able to understand the difference between small and tall and distinguishing between things like animals and people. Also finishing sequences of patterns with colors and shapes. So all of these skills are wonderful and I feel like are so foundational for a lot of the learning that my daughter is going to be engaging in this year as a kindergartner. In the literacy pack, you're going to find similar activities with literacy focus. So we have a lot of focus on initial sound fluency in the very beginning, being able to match up different sounds with their corresponding animal or object, being able to finish sequences of letter patterns, which is a very important skill, and it's also something that you see in the math pack. And so I used, again, a lot of manipulatives at the beginning, and once my daughter really started to get a better more confident in her writing ability, that's when we started to use dry erase markers for these activities. Then we have the preschool math, literacy, and writing workbook that I purchased again as an e-product from her Teachers Pay Teachers website, but it's also available on Amazon, and I will link that below if you're interested, because some kids do really enjoy working out of a physical book. I decided to get it as an e-product because I wanted to be able to print it a little bit by little bit, and that's what worked best for us. So with the literacy workbook, it's definitely something that requires a child to have those fine motor writing skills. And so I'm glad that we did the pre-K packs first, because that was a kind of a good entry for my child to be able to then use this preschool workbook. And so you'll see a lot of similar activities, and now she's able to color because it's just regular sheets of paper. For the literacy specifically, what I thought was interesting is that it doesn't just stop at those initial sounds. It also extends to ending sounds, which towards the end of the literacy pack, it also does that too. But then it brings you into the land of digraphs, which is those tricky blends that you'll see at the beginnings or even ends of words. And so I thought that was great, because that's something that even my first grader was able to practice and do whenever she needed that extra practice. With the math workbook, again, it's very similar to the math pack. And one thing that I did want to mention about both of these is that it doesn't just go through numbers 1 through 5 or even 1 through 10. It takes them all the way from 1 through 20, which I thought was really fantastic for my daughter to practice. And we also use a lot of supplementary activities and things like that. If you're interested in knowing some of what we used, I will link all of the activities in the description, but I also have a video that I think will be very helpful for you. It's all about how we preschool at home, so I highly recommend that you check that out. Now, as far as the writing workbook, it's basically a very simple, cut and dry practice workbook to be able to understand how to formulate all the letters and numbers. And so that's something that we're still occasionally working through. And I found it very helpful. My daughter really liked to mix it up. For instance, when we were practicing our writing, instead of just sitting down and doing the tracing, whatever the letter or number was of that particular day, we would also have some sensory activities, so writing in sand or rice, things like that, that really drew my daughter into what she was learning and practicing in her workbook. Now, if you couldn't tell already, at the very beginning of using this curriculum, it's going to be very hands-on where the parent is concerned. However, over time, a lot of the activities were very rhythmic for us. And so my daughter was able to predict what she needed to do. So whenever I grabbed a page from the literacy pack or a page that I downloaded from the preschool workbook, she was able to recognize what she needed to do, and she didn't need me anymore. So I like the fact that there is some predictability with this curriculum, and how you can take some of these things and put it in front of your child, and over time, they're going to gain that agency to be able to do some of the work independently. The key to implementing curriculum with your preschooler is to really just take it one day at a time and do little bits and pieces here and there. When we started our year, we were only doing about 5 or 10 minutes of work here and there. And the only reason why I've increased it over time is because my child was yearning for it, and she was showing me signs that she really wanted to do more. So I followed her lead, and that's what we did. It's always important to prioritize play in a child's preschool years and pre-K years. And so I would encourage you that as you are journeying to find different curriculum and resources, always make sure that you have play at the forefront of whatever activities they're doing. Thank you so much for spending some of your precious time with me today. I truly appreciate it, and I appreciate you. As always, if you have enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a great big thumbs up, a like, and also be sure to check out some videos over here that you might like as well. Take care, be blessed, and I'll see you in the next one.